Jessie Cruickshank, thank you so much for being on the Compared Who show today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. It's an honor to be here with you.
So, as folks read the title of this, or as they're, maybe engaging the show notes, like, what is this going to be about? I'm going to just give everyone a heads up. This is a little different than where we normally go on the show, but I heard Jessie at Exponential Conference last March, and I was telling her before we pressed record, I was like, oh, I didn't even want to go to any of the sessions necessarily. I was thinking about skipping out and going to the beach for today and missing the sessions. But I saw that there was a session on Gen Z. And I'm going to have you, Jessie, explain like who Gen Z is, just so everyone can be working from the same set of facts as we go forward today. But as I was listening to you talk about Gen Z, I was like, I took so many notes, Jessie, and then I was sharing, I was the evangelist for your session. I have shared those notes. I think I've got like 5 people that I'm sharing those notes with on Apple Notes because I was telling them so much. They were like, can you just send me your notes? I was like, sure.
You can also go to my website and get a download of like an article and a write-up,
That would
but
have
you
been
have to give me your
easier.
email address for that. But anyway, there are more notes available.
Awesome. But the research was fascinating. You've got a brand new book out on discipleship. And so today where I wanted our conversation to go was really to a place where women who are listening, and some of you are moms, some of you are working in churches or even in your community with younger people. I want to give you a sense of the data that Jessie shared so you know who you're working with. And then also, I can't get over the reality that for moms like me, and I'm going to even include some youth group workers and, other church servant leaders, it's hard to know how to talk to younger people about a lot of things, but body image in particular, oh, that's difficult. And my main gripe over the decades has been I felt like the church was only equipped to tell young girls, teens who struggle with body image, something along the lines of, well, God made you beautiful. Just remember, buy a Psalm 139:14 t-shirt. Remember you're fearfully and wonderfully made, and then you'll be fine.
Right. Click
Or
your
it's
heels, clap your hands, it'll all
right. It's what's on the inside that counts. So anyway, our conversation today, I want to go to all those places. But Jessie, will you just start by telling us like who is Gen Z and tell us kind of your research methods, because I thought that was fascinating too, how you've been studying them, how you've come to learn all of this about Gen Z.
Yeah, so Gen Z is the generation born about starting in 2001. They would be 23. Well, no, it's 98. I think they moved it to 98. Oh my gosh, I'm already screwing it up. We're 3 seconds into this conversation. I'm getting it wrong. I
No
think it's a
problem.
98 because they're 25. So 25 and younger. And generational cohorts, they break them up at like either 15 to 20 years or somewhere in there where there's a significant world events that kind of change the way the world is and the way that people grow up and the way they think about the world. So Gen Z has been through the economic crisis, the pandemic, like the rest of us. And the one after them is Alpha. So Alphas, I think they're doing 15-year cohorts because the world is changing so fast. So
Mhm.
10 and younger is an Alpha cohort, and we're not gonna know stuff about them for a little bit. They're still in formation. Older than Gen Z, so older than 25, the 25 to 40-ish. So 1980, born in 1980, that's the millennials. I'm older than that. So
Me
I'm a
too.
Gen Xer, you're a
Me
Gen
too.
Xer. Baby boomers are the older than us. They were born from 1945 to 1965. So 65 to 80 is the Gen X, and then 80 to 98 is millennials, and then 98 on is Gen Z.
Yeah.
So those are like the generational cohorts. People publish books by arguing whether or not there's gap years and there's a micro generation between. Okay, so great, that's fine, whatever. There's nuance. Let's just remember we're talking in generalities, and that any
Absolutely.
one person will be different. But what I started looking at generations when I went into full-time ministry when I was 22. and I helped lead and build a wilderness guiding program. And there was the way that I worked, which was I'm going to go and I needed to pack lunch, right? I needed to prepare for my course. And I just did that. And when I became in charge, then I was leading people the same way that I did it. And I'm like, go get ready for your course, go clean the bathroom, like just the same way. And I utterly failed my first
Mm.
year because it was like I was from the moon compared to how
Huh.
these other people were.
Yeah.
It turned out that they were millennials. So I had a great board member who took me to a conference and I learned about generational stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, I am from the moon compared to them. So I
Yeah.
started ministering and working with them according to how they were and their makeup. And being a disciple maker and teaching them to be disciple makers, I learned that there are very distinct ways that the generations define truth, think about spiritual maturity. I mean, there's things that are in other books like their work ethic and their, their value system and their communication styles. But for me, it's also what's important to them and what
Mm.
are the ways that I need to talk to them to help them change and grow and grow in Christ. So I've been tracking that for a long time. Now you can start to understand a generation when they're in middle school. So when Gen
Mm.
Z hit middle school, I started interviewing them. I'm a qualitative analysis kind of person. I don't have enough reach or enough hair to fight for surveys for quantitative, which is like the mass numbers. So I
Okay.
do interviews. Um, and I started interviewing Gen Zers when they were in middle school, kind of tracking what they think, kind of projecting into it a little bit because they're in middle school, they're not super articulate. But if I can read between the lines or whatever? And about 10 years ago, I was watching their value system and made a prediction that one of their core values is going to be justice as a
Mm.
generation.
Hmm.
That's proved to be true. Other people will get credit in books because I haven't published that along the way in some big way. But how they define truth, though, how do they identify truth? And then what do they think spiritual maturity is? That I've been watching. And the last 3 years, because COVID changed all of us and the pandemic and the shutdown and everything, it's changed everything. I started doing more interviews and interviewing Gen Zers now that were older and in their 20s. So they were serving in leadership positions, they were serving in ministry, like they had kind of picked some career paths, and talking to them again the same kinds of questions. What makes you respect somebody and think that they're spiritually mature and you want to learn from them? How do you know if something's true? What do you think about like ministry in the church, and why do you serve? What motivates you to be here and participate? And just asking those questions. So a lot of interviews, even put together a whole conference kind of thing, and interviewed a bunch of Gen Zers who had built ministries, and spent a few days hearing from them and talking to them. And oh my gosh, there was some there the trends were stronger than I anticipated. Let me say that. Like if
Wow.
anything, I don't know if COVID changed them, like the whole pandemic, but it definitely accelerated and solidified what would be maybe more lightweight trends, or they'd be a little more they just wouldn't be as strong. But
Yeah.
something happened in those few years, and the trends were the data was very strong.
Mm.
So instead of like 60% feel that way, it was like 95% feel that way or something like
Wow.
that. So
Wow. Wow. Okay.
yeah,
So where to start?
super
Let's
nerdy. I
No, I
know.
love it. I can totally geek out on all this. I love it. So let's start with, you just mentioned something, but I'm going to say that. Let's start with how their generation looks different, because that was fascinating to me. Because I think the data point you used, what I wrote in my notes, my copious notes, was something like 50% of their generation is biracial. Is that what the data was?
Yeah. So biracial, multiracial, this makes other people nervous. And it's why there's such an intensity around the race conversation. But I really think so. Like my sister-in-law is from Korea. My niece is biracial. And what's fascinating to me about the Gen Z is that unlike other generations, they don't mind different labels. Like they can have a collection of labels. I call them tags. I grew up in like the Microsoft like folder generation where it has a folder, it has a folder, it has a folder, and you have one label. And I don't want to be labeled. Don't stick me in that folder, because our Gen Xers hate labels. We think they're bad. Gen Zers don't care. Give me as many tags as make sense.
Yeah.
And I don't think that I think they're gonna push back on having to pick a race.
Yeah.
I think they're gonna be like, why do I have to choose my niece? Why do I have to choose between saying, I'm white Scottish descent
Mhm.
or I'm Korean? I'm both. And
Yeah.
so as many heritages as you want to receive and see yourself as, they're gonna push that envelope and be multi-ethnic, but more than 50% are multiracial. And that's only going to increase. So
Yeah. Well,
those of us who are homogenous
right. Boring,
are
boring white
decreasing.
girls. Well, no, the reason why that struck me though was thinking about like standard of beauty, right? So in
Mhm.
our generation, the standard of beauty was either the all white woman or, then along came Beyonce at some point, but there wasn't this diversity. I mean, there probably was, but not to the extent there is with this generation, where you've got so many different skin tones and it's beautiful, right? This is, I mean, I think this is a picture of heaven. It is the beauty and the diversity, but they're going to see the world so differently than we did from a standard of beauty perspective. And I love that. That's going to be different for them. Thoughts,
Yeah, because who's going to define what it is?
right?
And then hopefully maybe somebody will make clothes that fit more of us.
That would be nice. Right, because it is going to be more than just skin tone. You're exactly right, Jessie, because there are shapes and body types that come with different ethnicities, so that's all going to be meshed together. So yeah, I love that. Let's talk about anxiety though. That
Mm.
really struck me, because obviously, body image issues are tied to anxiety, but the anxiety that you were talking about with Gen Z is deeper and just more normative. Is that the word you'd use across everyone?
I would say comprehensive.
Okay.
Um, I don't know if I want anxiety to be
Normative.
normal.
Yeah. I know.
It is our pandemic. It is our plague right now. I mean, adults have anxiety, but this is a generation who doesn't have any regulation for their anxiety, and it's not a character flaw. I just, anyone who says, well, you need to just get over it or whatever, they need to get off their phone, like suddenly that's gonna save everything. Let's stop back, let's pause and understand the world that they grew up in, because the world that I grew up in wasn't that complicated.
Mm,
In it, I might have had my own baggage and my own issues and my own origin story traumas, but it wasn't a complex world. It was a
yeah.
small world full of
Yeah.
difficult things.
Right.
They not only have their small worlds full of difficult things, but because of the way that we communicate globally, they have been aware of things before they were able to do anything about it. And so, like I said, the economic meltdown, the war, we were in war their entire life.
Mm, wow. Yeah.
So what does that do when you know that's happening? Um, they watch the financial crash, they watch the millennials spend all the money to go to college and not get jobs because they aren't available.
Mm,
And and then they're incredible in debt with predatory lending practices
mm,
from student debt, right? So they are aware of this at the age of 7,
mm.
at the age of 10.
Wow.
And I think a lot of the anxiety is created by two things. One being what I call precocious awareness of the world.
Mm,
They are more aware of the struggle and the pain of the world. And at the age of 8, no one has that much like impact, right?
yeah.
They call that agency. So what can you do? You can't do much. Oh, and by the way, climate change, right?
Mm,
100% of the ones that I talk to, really think that the world is going to end or they're going to die at
wow.
60 and it's going to be their fault, right? Because everything's
Wow.
killing them and we're not saving the planet. So they get to
Yeah.
inherit that. Yay.
Wow.
They're totally pumped about it. So they're aware of this at a young age, unable to do anything, watching the rest of the generation struggle and not able to answer the questions. And that awareness beyond their ability to cope with it
Mm,
or mature, emotional and biological maturity to handle it creates anxiety. So that's one huge. Most of the ones I interviewed admitted to private crying at night.
Mm. Yeah.
Like, oh,
Yeah.
that's so painful. And then
Yeah.
the other thing is that one of the ways that we regulate, that we find peace, let's say that internal um calmness, peace, that I'm okay, it's going to be okay, I don't know if it's going to be okay, but I'm okay,
Yeah.
kind of state of being, is by being around other people. And so we find people who we actually like begin to share brain
Mm.
frequencies and emotional frequencies. And so this is a deep connection to one another.
Mm.
And when we have that, we're like, okay, so at least I have my people, I have my herd, I'm
Yeah.
part of something.
Yeah.
And that helps us be calm and calm down. Whether you're an introvert or extrovert, it's something that we need. Now, they don't have that either,
Mm.
because most of their social experiences is in the phone,
Mm.
and the phone can't mimic or replace the human connection of face to face. Even if you're FaceTiming, we have to work a little extra hard for that. But even just that feeling that we get by being next to somebody and close
Yeah.
to somebody. So they don't have a way to regulate themselves the way that our bodies are created to do that. So
Yeah.
they can't calm down. They can't find that peace. And their world is just extremely fractured. They don't share reality with anybody. Like,
Mm.
everybody has their own truth, and without that face-to-face connection to create a shared reality, a shared experience, to know I'm not crazy,
Yeah.
because they have that a lot less.
Mm.
And that creates a very fractured way of being in the world. So it's it's so comprehensive, the
Yeah.
anxiety that they feel for a lot of reasons, and none of them are their fault.
Yeah. Well, I remember you saying, and maybe you can elaborate on this too. Hopefully, I'm not butchering how you said it. I probably am, but you said something along the lines of like video, or like your Zoom discipleship group, or like that doesn't, like that's not what they're looking for. They are looking for that in-person connection. And I feel like I personally had kind of, I don't know, maybe stereotyped them in with the millennials, like, oh, well, Gen Z, they just want to do something on screen. And my oldest, he's almost 17. I remember signing him up for a college class last year, and he was like, I don't want to do it online. I was like, well, wouldn't you rather be online than, like, you're going to be the youngest person there. Are you sure you want to go to the community college? And he's like, yeah, I want to be there. So would you elaborate on that if I didn't butcher it too much?
No, it's totally right. Like, again, we're that would be us projecting.
Mhm.
Oh, you're young. Of course you want the technology solution.
Right.
So video time, video-based relationship is like the junk food of relationship. It kind of is there, but it's going to leave you a little malnourished, and
Yeah.
it may make us sick later. But in person, they're desperate for that, because they want that shared reality. They want that personal connection to help find ways to self-regulate and to feel and to not feel crazy. And it will help create a calmer, more stable person. So they're going to flip phones, and I mean like
Yeah.
old school phones, not like
Yeah.
the new ones that
Not
still
the
do
new
video,
Samsung. Yeah.
right? Like, or I know some that are even like not even using phones.
Mhm.
Um, they'll just, or they have extremely strong boundaries with their tech and that sort of thing. So, phone in of itself isn't a problem. It's the social media and the algorithm that
Mhm.
creates comparison, that
Yeah.
tells us we're doing it wrong, that tells us more about the world or our body or our life that we're doing wrong, and we can't actually do anything about it. That's what creates anxiety. It's not, you know, just a human connection. So they're definitely gonna go and swing the pendulum hard into the being with one another
Yeah.
kind of opportunities and experiences.
Yeah. So I think as parents listening, as church staff listening, servant leaders listening, like I think that's important to note. I mean, let's not let's break out of our COVID laziness with, oh, let's just go on Zoom and then I have to wear pants or
Right.
to the back of my
And
hair.
know that they're gonna be a little emotionally immature in that place than you would expect, a little less emotionally developed. They haven't had as much practice
Yeah.
They're going to be awkward when you think that they should be a little better. They're not going to like be gracious. They're
Yeah.
a little less aware of themselves and others and how to behave well in that dynamic. Be kind, be patient, they'll get
Yeah.
there.
That's good. I also remember you saying something in that same context about how they kind of just need to hear their own thoughts, whether or not they're quote unquote correct according to the leader or whatever, but they kind of just need to be heard. Can you extrapolate on that?
Yeah, is a that lack of agency that they felt growing up, the inability to impact all of these big things that affect them, has created in them, and it naturally so, right? A desire to speak into something. They don't want to be just told what to do. They are more aware than we give them credit for
Mm.
of things. They maybe so it's with their awareness outstrips their emotional ability to handle it. So little behind maybe emotional development, but ahead in their awareness and intellectual development. So they they want to be part of the conversation as an agent in that. They don't want to just be told what to do. They don't want to be talked down to. They also, what's funny is some of them said, one of them, well, one in particular had this quote when I interviewed her. She's like, I look around and all these leaders are emotionally unstable. And I sometimes am the most like rational, emotionally stable person in the room. So how come I can't be part of the conversation?
Mm.
And it was just really
Yeah.
interesting, and it lands with what they think spiritual maturity is. And they define that as someone who's done their work, who's been through the stuff and has done their internal work in order to be an unanxious presence,
Yeah.
and lead others. So,
Oh,
they don't see somebody who's done that and they've done more than that leader.
yeah.
Like that's going to create a lack of buy-in, a lack of respect. So they want to be part of the conversations. They want to have agency in their
Yeah.
own life and in what happens.
And for we, the leaders, that's communicated through authenticity. Is that
I think it means asking them. I mean,
okay?
sometimes it's okay. So I like love and logic.
Mm-hmm.
I use love and logic with everybody that I
Okay.
go work with. It doesn't work, it does work with kids. It works with adults too. So being like, okay, we're thinking about doing camp. Do you want this theme or this theme? We're thinking about where we're going to go to eat to dinner. Here's three options. Having the some measure of autonomy and being able to be part of the decision making. It doesn't have to be wide open. They don't have to have the blank slate or the empty canvas conversation. But having some say in what happens, even
Yeah.
if it's off of a menu kind of dynamic,
Yeah.
is really going to be helpful for them.
Yeah. That's good. Okay.
That alleviates anxiety, actually,
Yeah.
for them, or at
Hmm.
least lessens it.
Yeah. That's good. So as we close up this episode, do you remember the man? I think it was a man who asked you, "What did they dream about?" And do you remember your answer? Your answer
No,
was they don't dream.
that
And
that
and
would
I
be my answer for today
and
too.
you said something like that's how we'll know
Yeah.
we're discipling them well when they start dreaming. Would you, as we close up this part of the
Uh,
show, would you fill that out? Because that startled me.
yeah, they're in survival mode. They've been in survival mode their entire life,
Mm.
because the world has been in our society has been in survival mode. We've gone from crises to crises, and where there isn't one, we've been really good at making them up.
Mm.
And so they to dream is a luxury.
Mm.
They don't think that they have a future.
Yeah.
They think that it's just bad news, from bad news to bad news in front of them. And so to dream is extremely scary, extremely unstable. And I feel like for me, having my own story with dreaming and my own pathway with the Lord, redeeming that for me,
Mm.
dreaming means that we actually begin to hope that God is good and
Mm.
God is for us and God has good things for us, even if
Yeah.
the rest of the world is crashing,
Yeah.
right? And so, yeah, it's a big deal to help them think of possibilities
Mm.
that could be good. And
Yeah.
not just, I mean, there's a coping mechanism where I just do whatever it feels good because the world is burning anyway. But to dream means I actually believe in God and I believe in myself.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a big deal when they can turn that corner.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. So I'm glad we left it on some hope. Jessie, will you come back and be with us again and we can maybe offer more hope as to how we disciple and how this maybe connects to some body issues? Hopefully you'll be back in the next episode and I hope you will come back and watch or listen. I hope something today has helped you stop comparing and start living.